In a village nestled between rolling hills and singing streams, there lived a woman named Nanjala. Her name meant, born during hunger, but she carried herself with the grace of one who had never known want. Every morning, she would wake before the rooster's call and tend to her small garden behind the mud house she shared with her husband, Okello. Okello was a kind man with gentle eyes and strong hands. He worked as a carpenter, building homes for new families and fixing broken doors for old ones. But in their own home, there was a silence that grew heavier with each passing season. 5 years had passed since their marriage ceremony, when the whole village had danced under the full moon and blessed their union with songs of fertility and abundance. But Nanjala's arms remained empty, her belly flat, her heart heavy with unspoken grief. "Maybe the ancestors are angry," whispered Chikondi, the village gossip, as she drew water from the well. Her voice carried like the wind, reaching ears that should have been closed to such cruel words. Nanjala pretended not to hear as she filled her own clay pot. But each word struck her heart like stones thrown at a bird that could not fly away. 7 seasons, continued Mwansa, another neighbor who seemed to find joy only in others' pain. 7 seasons and not even a miscarriage to show for it. Perhaps the spirits have marked her as cursed. Each day began the same way for Nanjala. She would rise with the sun, sweep her compound clean, and begin the work that kept her hands busy and her mind from wandering to dark places. But the whispers followed her like shadows. When she went to market, the women would lower their voices and point with their eyes. When she passed groups of mothers bouncing babies on their hips, conversations would stop suddenly, leaving only the sound of her sandals on the dusty ground. Okello saw the pain in her eyes but did not know how to heal it. At night, he would hold her close and whisper, "The seasons will change, my beloved. The rains will come when they are ready." But even his gentle words could not wash away the sting of the village's judgment. The worst day came during the Festival of Mothers, when all women with children were honored with special songs and gifts. Nanjala tried to stay home, but Okello gently insisted they attend. "We cannot hide from life," he said softly. "We are part of this village too." So they went, and Nanjala sat quietly at the edge of the celebration, watching as mothers danced with their little ones, their faces glowing with pride and joy. "Look at her," hissed Chikondi to her circle of friends. "Sitting there like a dried-up well, expecting sympathy. If the gods wanted her to have children, she would have them by now." "Some women are just not meant to be mothers," added Mwansa with a cruel smile. "Perhaps it is better this way." Can you imagine what strange children such a woman might produce? The words cut deep, deeper than any physical wound could reach. Nanjala felt her heart breaking like a clay pot dropped from great height. She stood up quickly, tears burning her eyes, and ran from the celebration. She ran past the market, past the well, past the fields where children played, until she reached the old river that marked the edge of their village. There, beneath the spreading branches of an ancient fig tree, she fell to her knees and wept. Her sobs echoed across the water, mixing with the gentle sound of the current. She stayed there until darkness began to creep across the sky, her heart emptying itself of all the pain she had carried in silence. When Okello found her, he said nothing. He simply sat beside her and held her hand as the stars appeared one by one above them. The next morning brought something unexpected to the village, a stranger. She was an old woman with kind eyes and a walking stick carved with intricate patterns. Her clothes were simple but clean, and she carried a small bundle on her back. She stopped at the well where the women gathered and asked for water. Chikondi, always eager to be the first to question newcomers, approached her boldly. "Grandmother, where do you come from? What brings you to our village?" The old woman smiled and accepted the gourd of water. "I come from the mountains, child. I am searching for something precious that was lost long ago." The women gathered closer, their curiosity stronger than their manners. "What kind of precious thing?" asked Mwansa. "A story," the old woman replied mysteriously. "A story that needs to find its way home." As the old woman drank, her eyes wandered across the group of women. They settled on a figure in the distance, Nanjala, walking slowly toward her garden with her head down. "Tell me," the stranger said quietly, "who is that woman there?" "The one who carries the weight of the world on her shoulders." "Oh, that one," laughed Chikondi. "That is Nanjala, the barren woman. 5 years married and still no children. The whole village knows her shame." The old woman's expression grew serious. "Shame? What shame could there be in such a woman?" "She cannot give her husband children," explained Mwansa, as if speaking to a simple child. "What use is a woman who cannot fulfill her most basic purpose?" The stranger set down her gourd and looked each woman in the eye. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "you do not know what purpose truly means." That evening, the old woman asked permission to sleep in the village. The chief, following the ancient laws of hospitality, gave her shelter and food. After the evening meal, as was custom, the villagers gathered to hear stories from their guest. "I will tell you a tale," the old woman began, her voice carrying easily in the still night air. "A tale of a woman who lived in a village much like this one." The crowd settled in, children leaning against their parents, adults drawing their wraps closer against the cool air. This woman was married to a good man, but the seasons passed and no children came. The village mocked her, called her cursed, whispered that she was incomplete. Nanjala, sitting at the very back with Okello, felt her cheeks burn. The story felt too close, too real. But this woman had a secret, the old woman continued, her eyes finding Nanjala's across the firelight. A gift so rare that the ancestors themselves had blessed her with it. "What gift?" called out one of the younger men. "What could be more important than children?" The old woman smiled knowingly. She could speak to the spirits of lost children, the ones who died in their mothers' wombs, the ones who passed in their first breath, the ones who never found their way to earth at all. The crowd grew very quiet. Such talk made people uncomfortable, but they could not look away. These spirits, the woman continued, they lingered between worlds, confused and frightened. They needed someone with a pure heart and empty arms to guide them home to their ancestors. This woman, in her childlessness, had become a bridge between the living and the dead. Nanjala felt something stir deep in her chest, a recognition she could not name. Every night, the stranger said, she would go to the river and sing the ancient songs. One by one, the lost spirits would come to her, and she would help them find their way to peace. The old woman's voice grew softer, more intimate, as if she were sharing a sacred secret. The woman did not know, at first, why she had been chosen for this gift. She only knew that in her dreams, she heard the cries of children who had no mothers to comfort them. So she became their mother in the space between worlds. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the star-filled sky. The listeners sat transfixed, hanging on every word. But gifts like these come with a price, the woman warned. To serve as a bridge for the lost, she had to remain empty herself. Her womb was a sacred vessel, kept pure for the work she was called to do. Chikondi shifted uncomfortably. The story was making her think of all the cruel words she had spoken about childless women. "And what happened to this woman?" asked someone from the crowd. The old woman's eyes sparkled with secret knowledge. "Ah, that is where the story becomes truly wonderful." One terrible year, the old woman continued, a sickness came to the village. It took many lives, but worst of all, it took the children. Families were left empty, mothers were left weeping, fathers stood helpless in their grief. The villagers murmured among themselves. Everyone knew stories of such terrible times. The whole village fell into despair. The laughter of children, which had always filled the air like music, was gone. The future seemed to die with them. She paused, letting the weight of such sorrow settle over her listeners. But then, something beautiful began to happen. The woman who had been mocked for her childlessness became the village's greatest comfort. She knew how to speak to the spirits of the departed children. She could carry messages between the grieving parents and their lost little ones. Tears began to flow among the listeners as they imagined such heartbreak and such hope. Through her, the parents learned that their children were safe in the land of their ancestors. Through her, the spirits were able to say goodbye properly and move on to their eternal rest. The old woman stood up slowly, her walking stick steady in her hand. Her eyes moved across the crowd until they found Nanjala, who sat frozen with recognition and wonder. The woman became the most honored member of her village, the stranger said. Not despite her childlessness, but because of it. She had been chosen for a purpose greater than anyone had understood. Okello reached for his wife's hand and squeezed it gently. He had always known there was something special about Nanjala, something the others could not see. And when her work on earth was done, the old woman concluded, the ancestors rewarded her faithfulness. They gave her not one child, but many, spiritual children who would carry on her gift through the generations. The crowd sat in stunned silence, each person lost in their own thoughts about the story they had just heard. Then, slowly, the old woman walked directly to where Nanjala sat. She knelt down in front of her and spoke in a voice only she could hear. "Daughter," the old woman whispered, "do you hear them calling?" Nanjala's eyes widened. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge what she had always known but never understood. The dreams that came to her at night. The gentle voices that sang to her when she sat by the river. The feeling that she was meant for something beyond what others could see. I hear them," she admitted quietly. "But I don't understand what they want from me." The old woman smiled with deep compassion. "They want what every lost child wants, a mother's love to guide them home. You have been chosen, dear one. Your empty arms are not a curse but a calling." Tears flowed down Nanjala's cheeks, but for the first time in years, they were not tears of shame. They were tears of recognition, of purpose finally revealed. "But the village," she began. "The village will understand in time," the old woman assured her. "Truth has a way of revealing itself to those who are ready to see it." That night, Nanjala could not sleep. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Okello, and made her way to the river where she had wept just days before. But this time, she came not in sorrow but in acceptance. She sat beneath the fig tree and closed her eyes. For the first time, she did not push away the voices that called to her in the darkness. Instead, she opened her heart and listened. They came slowly at first, the whispers of children who had never drawn breath, the cries of babies who had died too soon, the confused calls of young souls who did not know where to go. And Nanjala, the woman the village had mocked for her empty womb, began to sing. Her voice, sweet and clear, rose into the night air. It was a lullaby, a prayer, a bridge between two worlds. One by one, she felt the lost spirits drawing near, comforted by her presence, guided by her love. By dawn, she felt different. Lighter. Complete in a way she had never imagined possible. In the weeks that followed, strange things began to happen in the village. Mothers who had lost children years before started having peaceful dreams instead of nightmares. Families who had been torn apart by grief found themselves healing in unexpected ways. And it all seemed connected to Nanjala. Women began to notice that when they saw her walking to the river at night, their sorrow felt lighter the next day. Children who had been afraid of the dark suddenly slept peacefully. Slowly, quietly, word spread about the old woman's story and its possible connection to their own Nanjala. Chikondi was the first to approach her with humility instead of mockery. "Sister," she said, using a term of respect she had never offered before, "forgive me for the cruel words I have spoken. I did not understand the work you were called to do." Nanjala looked at her former tormentor with compassion. "There is nothing to forgive," she said gently. "We all see only what our eyes are ready to see." Years passed, and Nanjala became known throughout the region as a woman of rare gifts. People traveled from distant villages to seek her help in communicating with lost loved ones. Her home, once marked by silence and sorrow, became a place of healing and hope. Okello watched his wife with pride and wonder. He had married a woman he thought was barren, only to discover she was more fertile than any mother, fertile in ways that fed the spirits and healed the hearts of an entire community. The old woman never returned to their village, but her gift of truth had changed everything. Nanjala's empty arms had become full in ways no one had ever imagined possible. And on quiet nights, when the village children were safely tucked in their beds, Nanjala would still walk to the river. There, beneath the stars, she would sing her lullabies to the lost ones, guiding them home with a love that needed no womb to carry it. Not all purposes are visible to the eye. Some women are meant to mother the living, others to comfort the dying. Every heart carries its own sacred work, and judgment often blinds us to the very blessings we seek to understand. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that every person carries a hidden purpose the world cannot see, then share this tale with others. Like and subscribe to hear more stories of hidden wisdom and unexpected blessings. For in sharing these ancient truths, we help heal the wounds that judgment creates, one heart at a time.